The issue, of course, is that 750 million people will be affected in the best case scenario. So if we do something about climate change, we can do something about poverty prevention. And poverty prevention is much cheaper than to do something about the actual poverty alleviation when it's this far. And that's why Good Energy has also now included poverty prevention in the form of climate change support. One of the projects that we have been supporting is the Solar Foundation, the German Solar Foundation, in Rima, north of Addis Ababa, set up a solar village. It's about 1,100 huts. Last year they installed neighboring village another 1,400 huts. So about 10,000 people now have access to lighting. They can learn at night. The light, you have to imagine like a very expensive LED bulb with lots of little LEDs inside. And the reason we use that is that you can cut the total system cost to half. So whatever you do with regards to the environment, you always have to take a holistic view. Now let's hope that our children do not see this as the last iceberg and make us all work at it. Thank you. Okay, anyone with a question?
Would you comment on solar thermal as opposed to PV? Have you done any work in that area, direct heating
Yes.
of water or other liquids with solar energy?
Yes, we have invested, we have in total about slightly more than 30 investments, 12 in solar, 13 in wind, and then the remainder in green building, like ice energy, chromatic glass, and things like that. And we have one investment in solar thermal, which is solar reserve. We tended not to go into solar thermal because solar thermal you have, like the troughs, for instance, where you have mirrors, you have glass, it's all standard material or highly specialized materials with little cost saving. So if you look at the cost per watt for solar thermal, it's somewhere between 11 and 17 dollar cents. Now, if you look at PV, it is much higher today, about 3 times as high, but with the potential to undercut it very fast within the next 10 years. So if you set up a solar thermal plant, you have to think about 50, 100 megawatts, and you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars investment. So our view is that it does make sense, at least short term, but in future PV will be cheaper. Now, the reason why we invested in solar reserve is that they're one of the few who use molten salt as a storage medium. So then you can release the power at the peak times where you really need it. And that's when this system will be more efficient than other normal solar thermal systems. But solar thermal is, of course, one way to go.
Are you looking into imitating nature with some type of artificial photosynthesis that directly converts solar energy into carbohydrates?
Well, actually, we are a very narrowly focused investment company. And so there are lots of very good, interesting technologies out there where we do not have access to or where we're not following to. One thing, one investment we did do is conductive polymers and diacetyl solar. And the reason there is that it already works. It has an issue with stability. It has it's not long lasting, and it has a very low efficiency. But if you think about windows, for instance, a coating on a window costs about 5 cents. You need 6, 7, 8 layers for a solar cell. So you could have a square meter or 10, 11 square feet covered for 40 cents. Now, some of you might know Professor Gretzel, who is the developer of this diacetyl solar from the EPFL in Lausanne. And when we talked to him, he said there are 3 companies out of 12 who are successful in this. So we looked at the 3 companies and invested in one of them. And his idea is that within a few years, you will have see-through diesel solar. So maybe in 10, 20 years, you will not be able to buy glass without solar on it. And if you look at, for instance, the Benelux, we know one glass supplier there who provides 5 million square meters a year with 25% market share, then you can figure out it's like 0.8 square meters. It's about 9 square feet per person in the developed world that is glass sold to, which means that if you cover each one of these sheets with solar, it will be tremendous advantage in the future at a very, very low cost. And it will be more expensive to take those layers off than, like it will just be the float glass where you have that on it.
I have a question, Marcel. Geographically, where do you see the innovation coming from? I mean, how much of it is from Europe? How much from North America? How much from China? I mean, it used to be said, you know, that Germany does not tend to be an entrepreneurial country. It was once said that if Bill Gates had been German, he might now be a fairly successful mid-level engineer at Siemens. But one senses that in the energy sector that there's a different picture emerging. So where are the centers of innovation in the world?
The Japanese do a lot, but you don't see a lot about it. You notice it. The Germans, like take Q-Cells. Q-Cells has 200 people in research and development. It's the largest cell maker. When we invested in that company, it was number 22 out of 22, and we pushed it to become one of the largest now. And so they have 200 people working on all kinds of elements. And we work very closely with a lot of institutes, with the Fraunhofer Institute, with like there are many institutes in Germany, also in Switzerland. So that's one area where a lot of innovation is taking place. And then the more futuristic innovation is taking place in the valley, Silicon Valley.
Final question? Greg, you still have a question?
I'd be interested in your comments on storage technologies. You talked a little bit about this ice cooling, so but other ways of smoothing out the peaks in solar, whether it be through battery technology or storing it as heat, or water storage flywheels, whatever you've looked at. Do you have any comments on that and what you think might be interesting?
We've looked basically at all technologies. We've invested in one battery company. It's very expensive so far. So the solar reserve with the molten salt is probably the cheapest way at the moment, but we need to find solutions. There needs to be a lot of support on battery technologies. And I remember first time I went to the ADL labs in Cambridge. I don't know whether they still exist, but that was 10 years ago. The surprising thing was that inside it looked like 50 years old. It wasn't at all modern. And so I asked the question, I said, well, is there no, what's the technical development like? And they said it's very, very slow. We know the technologies, we know what to do, we know how to do it. So it's, you just don't come to a new solution easily. And what we're working on today, that will take another 10 years. Then the next step comes, it will take another 10 years. So it's 10-year steps of the technology changes in batteries, which is unfortunately, it's like physics that you can't trick out,
Well, thank you very much, Marcel. Let's offer Marcel a round of applause. I want to thank all of the speakers today. I just counted. I think we had at least 7 nationalities represented among our speakers today. Many of them traveled from distant parts of the world to be with us today, and I think really contributed to the richness of the program. So one more round of applause for Dr. Pachauri and all the other great speakers today.